over rates. And why are they so slow? So the thing that's prompted this, Joe, is the article that was out 5 days ago ahead of the Caribbean Premier League, which I did share with you, and I've gone to click on it and it doesn't exist anymore, so I don't know what's happened, but I found it somewhere else. Essentially, in the CPL, they're going to use a red card in an attempt to combat slow over rates. And it goes on to say the 2023 Caribbean Premier League men's and women's has announced severe penalties for teams going through their overs slowly, even putting in place a red card-like system of removing a player if the fielding side is behind the schedule at the start of the 20th over of an innings, a first in the game. There are some questions that have come in about it, but I'm going to ask you a question first. Is what actually is in place at the moment for you as a professional cricketer for the Trent Rockets in the 100 or for the Sunrisers in the Rachel Hayhoe or the Charlotte Edwards? What do you have to contend with?
Yeah, so there's obviously like a cut-off time that some people, like it's always shown on the scoreboard in grounds and stuff, and basically that's the time that you have to have started bowling. If it's a T20 game, the last
19th,
over,
no, 20th,
the 20th
over,
or in the 100, the last set. So you need to be, the bowler needs to be at the top of their mark, ready to bowl the 96th ball by the time the cut-off time comes around. And as soon as the time hits that cut-off time and you're not in ready to start and bowl the last set or last over, you have to bring a fielder up inside the circle. So obviously at the back end of a short format T20 or white ball game, that can be quite costly, only having 3 out in the women's game or 4 out in the men's game. However, it's quite ironic actually. So last night, watching the Trent Rockets against the Manchester Originals, I think it was Zaman Khan that was bowling the second to last set. And I looked up at the clock and I thought, Rockets were needing like 2 a ball consistently throughout the back end of the chase. And the cut-off time was hit, and I think there was 6 or 7 balls left. So as soon as that cut-off time is hit, it's only ever one fielder that's brought up right. So you can take as long as you want talking about your tactics and where you want to bowl in between balls and all things like that. And it was Paul Walter who was then bowling the last set, and Josh Butler was insistent on going up to Walter at the end of his mark between every single ball, changing the field and little slights like that, because there was no extra penalty for, like, once you've hit the cut-off time, that's it. Like, it's just one fielder up.
Yeah.
There's no further penalty other than that. Obviously, I can see, having read the article about the CPL and the WCPL, that there are other restrictions and stuff that are going to be involved the longer the time goes on, which I think is probably the way to go, because I feel like, from my experience, just bringing one fielder up, like you say, and say there's still, I don't know, an over and a half to go, you can then just take as long as you want. So there's still no restriction on getting the game done quickly, which is obviously the whole point of T20, the 100. That's what it's all about. It being short, sharp, snappy. Yeah, that was just my view on it. But it's quite a nice example of how it does end up going once that cut-off time's hit.
Yeah, because the way that you've kind of spoken about that kind of, to me, kind of alludes to the fact that, like, maybe the professional cricketer just doesn't really care, if that makes sense. Like, one fielder's come up inside the circle, it's gone, oh well, doesn't really matter. And I guess bowlers might be so skilled that they can bowl to a particular plan where they only have 4 outside the circle. Maybe they literally don't really give a monkeys about it at all. When you are out on the field, like, are you all looking at that cut-off thing? Is the captain looking at that cut-off thing? Like, is it a conscious thing to kind of go, come on, in your instance, girls, we need to get round quickly because we've got 2 overs left and we've got 10 minutes left on the clock or something, like, we need to get on with it? Or is it just a case of get round to about the 20th over and then just suddenly go, okay, well, we need to bring somebody in? Like, I'm a bit confused as to how that actually works on the field.
Yeah, no, from a personal perspective, I'm always, like, just looking up. It's not all the time, not every ball, but if I feel like we've gone a bit slow, then I'll look up and try and work out by, for instance, in the 100, by how many balls we need to have the timing for how many balls that have been bowled, things like that, and then working out if we're going to be fine with the time. It's like yesterday, I think we were ready to bowl the 96th ball and had like 7 minutes before the cut-off time, which is crazy, really. But the umpires are pretty good in letting the captain know if you're 2 minutes down or 2 minutes up. Like they'll give you an inkling as the innings is going on, whether you need to push the tempo a little bit or you've got a bit of extra time thinking at the top of your mark, like just getting a bit of extra clarity on bowlers' plans and stuff. But it can certainly feel chaotic, and obviously when the ball's getting hit to all parts and you're having to go and retrieve the ball from the boundary, there's no accounting for that. That's all part of the time. It's only genuine stoppages, like if there's someone gets hit on the head and they need to have a concussion test or whatever, little things like that. So if you're getting absolutely sent to all parts and you're going to collect the ball and then you get hit at the back end of an innings having to bring another person in inside the rope, it can feel like absolute chaos, which is where you just have to try and bring a real sense of calm and I guess composure in those moments, which is really handy in the 100, for example, where you've got the strategic timeout. So if you feel like things are getting a little bit too frantic, and just bring everyone together for 90 seconds or whatever it is, and they'd be like, look, right, we need to get around a bit quicker here, everyone be on it, etc., etc. And you can kind of rally the troops a bit in that way. But I know, obviously, I think you were going to allude to it in terms of the test match, the Ashes and the players getting fined and things like that. I'm not sure if there are any of those kind of repercussions in our game at the moment.
No, I was going to say, all you've got to do is look at the World Test Championship table and just see how many points have been docked as well. It's as you say, maybe there aren't monetary kind of penalties. It's that kind of player penalty. But to think that you lose your match fee or lose half your match fee, you lose your World Test Championship points, and there still isn't a massive incentive to get round. I can't think of a proper the right way to say it, but it baffles me as a fan's perspective. It's like, what is it actually going to take for people to get on with it, if that makes sense? It's like, oh, you've got to bring a player in. Nah, that's not really going to be enough of an incentive. We're going to dock you 75% of your match fee. Nah, it doesn't matter. Oh, by the way, you're not going to make the World Test Championship final because we've taken all of your points away because you never got round. And it's just like, nah, it doesn't really matter. I don't understand really what can actually happen to in cricket for things to actually kind of just get on with it.
Yeah, it's interesting to see, obviously, with how that's gone in terms of the World Test Championship, those restrictions and consequences are clearly not enough because it's still happening. So you just wonder how far they're actually going to push it, and whether that's people getting banned. Did that used to happen? Have people been banned, I'm pretty suspended for a game or a couple of games for slow over rates?
Yeah, I think captains have missed a test match because of the slow over rates, but that seems to have kind of disappeared from the game at the moment.
Yeah, so it'll be interesting, and it'd be nice to get a player's perspective in the CPL if anyone does actually end up getting a red card. I mean, it'd kind of be funny if a team... I'd kind of like a team to get red carded, but almost do it on purpose to see what it looks like. Like, so if they're going really slow and then be like, oh, who are we going to send off? Because isn't it like the captain's responsibility to choose a fielder or something? I think that would be hilarious.
Yeah, I think because you could really upset people in your dressing room as well, couldn't you? It's kind of like, actually, you're the crappiest fielder that we've got, so you can go and sit down for a bit. Like, I mean, potentially, if that person thinks they're a gun fielder, that's going to really upset people. It's a strange dynamic. It really is a strange one. I think as well, like, the other thing is the paying public, and obviously I can speak quite passionately from this side of it, from a fan's perspective. And obviously you paid to go up to Old Trafford, didn't you, for the Ashes test as well? But like, the fans never get any kind of repercussion for it. Like, again, there was a comment going, well, if the cricket's good, does it really matter? But the reality is like, people have paid a lot of money to go to watch these games of cricket, and potentially they're getting shortchanged with lack of overs in a day if we're talking about Test cricket. potentially people are having to leave early because the last train runs at a particular time, and there's still 5 overs left because the first innings was so long. But they never ever see that back. It's kind of, we find the England team 75% of their match fee. It's like, yeah, but where does that go? It doesn't, like, they don't just go around to the fans at the end of it and go, because we didn't bowl you 8 overs or 12 overs or something in the day, here's 20 quid, go and get yourself a Burger King on the way home to say sorry. Like, it never makes its way back to the people that have actually paid to go in and watch it in the first place.
Yeah, it's a really valid point, actually. And obviously it's the fans that make sport go round as well. Obviously, I know how much money some of these governing bodies and stuff have, not just in cricket, but other sports as well. But it's very much the fans and the supporters that keep clubs going, keep organisations going. So in terms of them getting reimbursed, whether they have to leave early because the games ran 25, half an hour over the time that they had allotted to go and watch a game, for example, that's obviously then impacted their experience, not only in terms of they've not got value for money for their ticket and going to watch the sport, but that's messed up their travel plans as well, and then onward journeys and things like that. It will definitely be interesting to see, and I would like to see some different ways of going about managing the over rates, because, like you say, it's clearly not strict enough at the minute.
Yeah. Last question then, Joe, from the Patreon. It's come from Bongo, or the cricket umpire. He gave me out in the game, LBW, so I will ask you a question. But he said, in regards to the over rates, do you think the ICC should give a bit more scope to the umpires to punish teams on the spot to push the games along more? I suppose that kind of does bring into this red card. It does bring into you need to bring a player inside a 30-yard circle. No, you can't have another pair of gloves. No, you can't have a drink. Those kind of things. Like, do you think that would help? I mean, the umpires, I guess, are, with the DRS reviews, like in Test cricket particularly, I think teams get 3 now. So, I mean, maybe they don't look at the front foot anymore. Maybe they could take a little bit more responsibility for that. And if that was there, what would you like to see the umpires be able to do? I think, just before you answer, I think what I would like to see preference would be a bit more proactivity rather than punishment, if that makes sense. So I'd rather, like you've said earlier, like the umpires are good at kind of saying, look, you're a couple of minutes behind where you need to be. I kind of feel like that would be quite a good thing to have, almost like an official timekeeper, if that makes sense, and kind of say, you need to be at this stage by this point. And we will try and get you to that stage, because we realise the fact that Steve Smith's had 15 gloves over in the first hour. We realise that Alex Hales has had another drink. We realise the fact that they've reviewed something that was clearly out and it's taken time out of the game. But like, what would you, first of all, is that something you'd like to see? And second of all, what could they possibly do on top of the stuff that we've maybe spoken about already?
Yeah, I think when it comes to like the timings and stuff, it's really frustrating when things take longer than they're meant to in the first place, right? Whether that's sport, whether that's doing a job that you've allocated a certain amount of time for around the house, for example.
Are you talking about this podcast, Joe?
Yeah, of course not. I'm definitely on the camp of keeping it proactive, like you say. I think increasing that responsibility that the umpires have, and almost ensuring they're supporting the captain and the players that are on the pitch to make sure that they hit the time limit, and not, as you say, be like, look, you're going to get fined X amount if you're not done by this time. So I think the umpires do have a role in making sure the game is pushed forward accordingly. So I don't know what else that could look like. I don't know how these cards are going to go down if they do come out. But what about like a 5 over sin bin or a 2 over sin bin?
Yeah.
Something like that would be funky, wouldn't it? Just complete
penalty
just
run.
Write this new rule in, like sat at Lords in the writers' room where they make the laws of cricket, and just write in this new one. We are fed up of over rates, so we are introducing a sin bin. It'd be funny.
I think it needs it though. I think it needs it, and it needs something quite extreme. And whether this red card system is going to be the way forward or not, I mean, who knows? But potentially, I don't know. What do you call it? Oh, extra runs, depending on how long you've got left. I don't know, Joe. But anyway, thank you very much. It's been a good chat. There's been some good stuff. We've solved pretty much nothing.